I wanted to talk about how we cope with bipolar disorder. Video that was about, I think it was called like the top 5 things that I do to manage bipolar disorder. And I was like, there's so many other things. Like, yes, there's these kind of like basic things that I do, like obviously take meds. Maybe not obviously. Some people don't take meds, and that might be okay. But for me, I definitely need medication for bipolar. The other things I said were sleep. So meds, rest, and then exercise and nutrition. So those are my top 5, but there's so much more. So I want to get into that today. And before we get too deep, I will just do a little quick introduction. So I'm Jess Curtis. If you're new here, welcome. And I've had bipolar disorder. I was diagnosed bipolar 1, not 19, 27 years ago, a long time ago when I was 19 and I was in college and I college somehow. But I'm now 46 and have been living with bipolar for a very long time, most of my life. And it's been an interesting road. The first decade or so was really rough. I wasn't on great meds. I wasn't taking care of myself very well. I didn't even really know how to cope with bipolar. I just was very ignorant about it. And then I got a different doctor. It was like my fourth or fifth doctor. And he got me on good meds and really taught me a lot. And that's when I sort of started exploring more about bipolar disorder and learning ways to cope with it. And I know, sometimes we're doing things that are maybe unhealthy ways to cope with bipolar, but I know we're always trying. And I think most people I know with bipolar are really trying hard to live well with it and can, right? Because I don't know about you, but I do still have some symptoms, not as severe or as often as I did when I wasn't on good meds, but I still have them. And like recently, probably seen my videos, I came out of a 2-month mixed hypomania episode. So that was hard. That was rough. But yeah, so I'm going to look here in the chat for a second. I did put in the chat a question. What is your number one way to cope with having bipolar besides medication? And if you're like a friend or a family member or caregiver or just someone close to someone who has bipolar, tell me your number one way to cope as well. Because we all need ways to cope. I mean, it's difficult whether you have it or whether someone close to you has it. So let's see. And if you have a question, please, try to write question before the question. It just makes it a little easier. I see some people in here. Ann Lunam, hello. Andrea, Angie Hayes, Megadan. She said, I have bipolar 1, trying to look into metabolic therapies. Yeah, tell us how that's going, because I would be interested to know. I also see Des the Kid, the polar opposite. The polar opposite. Oh, Moss, thank you so much for the super chat. You didn't have to do that. I did. Moss, like, can you make sure the super chats are working? Because I know Dan, the polar opposite, said last time it wasn't working, and I don't know. I don't know if it was me or YouTube or what, but it looks like it's working. Oh, Refused is here. Hi, everyone. So I'd love to hear, what is your number one way to cope with bipolar besides meds? So I would definitely say my number one is sleep. And if I am not getting the greatest sleep, wow, downhill. Okay, one second. My husband's here. Yes.
It's glitching a little bit.
Okay.
Not bad, but it is.
Brian's telling me that it's glitching a little bit. Can you please, Brian?
Yeah.
Can you please not be on the internet right now?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what's happening with the internet. Last week it was a little bad, and we thought it was because the NFL draft is in Pittsburgh and the system was totally overloaded and people weren't having cell service in the city. He's saying it's still glitching a little bit. I don't know what's going on. Tell me tell me, guys, if it's still not doing too well. Okay, so Mega Dan said, bought the book Brain Energy by Dr. Chris Palmer. Yes, I've heard of that book. I hope that works well for you. Oh yeah, I should have had Brian like actually come on come on screen, but got to hear him a little bit. And Don Winland, Molly. So, oh, of course. So one of the ways that I cope with having bipolar is honestly just by having this channel and talking on social media. And I only started doing this like 5 or 6 years ago, but it has really helped me just to have an outlet. And, it's not for everyone. I mean, with the way my life is and like my job, like I can be very open and not everyone can be. So I get that. But for me, being able to talk, just be open about bipolar is a huge coping mechanism. And just like talking to all of you and connecting with all of you. I'm really sorry if it's glitching. My husband is getting off the internet, so hopefully that helps. I'm really unhappy with my my wireless now that is doing this. But Andrea just said, I recently found how important sleep is. Got out of a mixed episode. Addressing my sleep has been amazing. Exercise, yes. Avoiding any form of stimulants like caffeine. Yeah, I recently, well, a few months ago, I stopped drinking coffee. I try not to have any soda. That's one way that I can try to cope and not go into episodes. So, okay, thanks, Moss. So do you do the same things? Like, do you have the same coping mechanisms modes as you do like when you're stable, when you're totally stable? Because there's a lot of things that I do all the time, and it does help me when I'm within an episode, like whether I'm manic, hypomanic, depressed, in a mixed state, having things like trying to get sleep, of course, but also like nutrition. I'm trying to like cut out sugar as much as possible because that tends to like, if especially if I'm in an up episode, mania, that can push me further. So I will do something like that. But let me know. Let me know what you guys do. So I will also, well, I started doing this all the time now. One of my coping mechanisms is avoiding news, avoiding, for a while, I could read news. I couldn't watch the news and just have it like bombarding me. It was too much for me. I could read it and decide, okay, I can handle this. And now I just avoid it altogether. That's a big one. Yeah, Moss says everyday management is episode management. I agree. But there are some things I do a little differently in episodes. I was just checking here. What else do I do differently in episodes? I think it's really important to have a support system and to have people who you really care about and care about you and will check on you and all of that. But if I'm in an episode, I will tend to retreat a bit and just have more alone time because it can be too stimulating. Let's see the question from Molly Miniature. I get stress headaches from anxiety. Does anyone get those from being bipolar? Just anxious. What do you do to manage them? Personally, I don't think I do. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. I think when I'm really stressed, which can be when I go into an episode, I I can start to get I have chronic migraine, so I can start to become more symptomatic with that if I am like feeling really overwhelmed or stressed. But I don't on how to manage them because if mine are really bad, I take a triptan. So I take rizatriptan as like a rescue med for migraine flares. So I don't know, it's hard. It's like what can we do to prevent the headaches from happening at all? Maybe that's one way to go about it. But I'm sure, Molly, you're doing lots of things to treat your anxiety. And I think you said you were on medication. So maybe if anyone else, I'd like to, if we can crowdsource any answers for Molly Ann. I keep saying Molly Ann, but you're on as Molly Miniature, so I know you as Molly Ann. Yes, Megan Ann said hydration and sleep can help maybe. I think that's a good point. And yes, Ann Lunam said support and community is so important. It really is. And I think having this YouTube channel and just I'm also on Instagram and Facebook if you ever want to find me there. I'm also under R Bipolar. It has been one of the best things I've done to manage bipolar. I mean, I'm doing it because I also want to help people and I don't want people to go through what I went through early in my diagnosis when I really, I can just call you Molly. Okay. I really went through, and this was before like social media was much of a thing. I mean, I was diagnosed in 1999. So this was like ages ago, right? And I just didn't have these kind of outlets as much. And then when it started coming about, I I was very shy and I just like didn't feel comfortable opening up. And then really I started to open up more when so I became pregnant with my daughter and as I was pregnant I realized like, I don't know why this had occurred to me before obviously, but like really then I was like, wow, her mother is going to have bipolar disorder. She's going to grow up with a mother with bipolar. Not only do I want to be as healthy as I can for her and limit any sort of episode, I also want to start living more proudly with bipolar. And because I was very comfortable with it and I told a lot of people, but I wasn't completely open. And I wanted her to see me and not see me being secretive with it. And like I said, everyone has a different path and a different choice in these ways. But I wanted her to know that there's nothing wrong with this. This is a health issue that I was born with and I developed. And her to see me like living openly and proudly. But it still took me a few years, from when she was born and like, when I really started getting into it. But yeah, and so having the community is just like such a blessing. It's been so wonderful. All right. Yes, Mega Dan said I still mostly private with it, talk about it occasionally. And what's right for me is not going to be right for you probably or maybe, it's just whatever works for you. But I do find that's one way I really cope. And oh, and Moss said she told a stranger today because it was pertinent, the outcome was good. I love that. I do that sometimes and always like I don't know what's going to happen. Like I don't know how they're going to take it, but I try to like I usually just like it's nothing, like it's anything else, because it kind of is. But for people who are not kind of in the know, it's not like that for them. So I'm just sort of like ready for whatever reaction I get. Refuse to say to said, how long has it been since you had a full blown mania? Okay, it's been a really long time. I mean, I'm very lucky for that, and I've worked hard as well. But it's been like so the first 10 years I had many full-blown manias, and since I got on lithium, so it's been like 17 years, 18 years, something like that. I had a really big one right before I got on lithium, and And it happened when I was out of town. I was visiting my brother where he lives, and like that made it worse because then this was going on and I became like delusional, and I was like in psychosis, and I did not have, at that point I was off meds, which I do not recommend, but I was completely off meds and I was sort of like stuck there. I was about like 3 hours from home, and my mom had to come and like drive me back to Washington, D.C., where I lived at the time. And I had to leave my car at my brother's, and then eventually went and got it. It was like, it was a bad situation. And it really kind of scared me enough to get on good meds. Well, to find a better doctor, to keep trying, because I had already tried, you know, a few doctors, a few psychiatrists. But I was like, okay, I need to get serious about this. I need to really do some research, find someone good. And I did, and that's who I'm still with, the same psychiatrist today. But yeah, I'm very lucky. It's been a lot of mixed hypomania since then. I mean, not a lot. I would say like at least once a year usually. And usually the episodes for me are about a month, but this last one was 2 months. And I was starting, but I think my sleep was getting really disrupted, and the Seroquel wasn't really helping me sleep enough. So yeah, I'm lucky it has been a while. Let's see. Hi, Nick Jones. I don't know if I know you, but welcome if you're new here. Speaking to peers and allowing time for self-reflection. Yeah, I agree. Prioritize your mental well-being. It's an everyday process to overcome and always a work in progress. I so agree. After I had this last episode, the hypomania episode, I was really like taking a look at myself and like thinking, doing like, I know it's not all me, but I was really overextending myself in ways that I did not need to. Because people will say to me, like, oh, you have a child, you work full time, like, you can't help being busy. And it's like, well, yes, to a certain extent. But I was also going and doing social things and things that I was just doing too much of it. And I should have known better, but I just kept thinking, like, oh, I'm stable. Like I can do all of this, everything. like, and I can't. I really can't, because rest is so important, at least for me, and just not getting overwhelmed. And I can get overwhelmed easily, and that's probably part of having bipolar disorder. At least for me, it is. So I totally agree with you, Nick. Let's see. So let's see here. This is a good point here. RM 10177 says, for me, I just don't want my employer to know. So I keep it to me. Posting anywhere feels like risk. Okay, I totally relate to this. I'm very lucky, like where I work for a nonprofit. It's very, like, just very flexible, and people are very understanding. Most of my coworkers do know by now, especially because I'm so open, but it's not an issue. It's never been an issue. Although I haven't registered the disability with HR because I just haven't, my job the way it is, being so flexible and having so much kind of time off built up now, I haven't needed to do that. But I understand like certain workplaces are not going to be that accommodating or that helpful and understanding, and it's feel out your situation and know what's best for you. I would never advocate for people just willy-nilly to like open up to their employers about it. I totally get that. And I hate that that's the way it is, if that's the way it is for you. I mean, but at the same time, you have to do what's best for you. Keeping it to yourself can be the best thing. And if you do need accommodations, I know that when you do register it with HR, you don't have to say what it is. You could just say, I have a medical condition, I believe. And then you can leave it at that and ask for whatever, accommodation you need. Oh, okay. Molly says I'm not on meds for anxiety. Okay, sorry. I think because you mentioned having Lexapro in your drawer before, I thought that meant you were taking it. but but I understand these things. I know like people who have taken Lexapro, and sometimes, obviously with meds there can be side effects. We can talk about, if you want, we can talk about like side effects and what we do to cope with side effects, which is like another thing unto itself. Let's see. Sorry, I feel like I'm slow through all the questions. Okay, thank you, Moss. Question from the chat. How to explain to family that doesn't get it? How does the mind heal itself? Okay, well, that's two questions, but how to explain to family that doesn't get it? Well, I think the best way, obviously your family has to be somewhat willing to educate themselves or to be educated on what bipolar disorder really is and what it isn't. And, that it's a medical condition and that you are taking meds, you are doing this, and this, all the things you're doing to try to be well. And also, like, keeping in mind when you're in an episode, once they learn, what is mania, what is depression, hypomania, mixed episodes, that you may be acting much differently. Maybe not, but you may be acting a lot differently. And this is not you. This is not your personality. This is how you are acting in the episode because of bipolar. So I think that can be helpful. There can be books they can read. They can go on the internet and look. They can go on YouTube channels like mine. But they also have to be willing to learn. So that can be difficult, right? And also, how does the sick mind heal itself? I don't personally like to use the word heal. Um, this is a lifelong illness, but how do you heal your mind? How do you help your mind get better? How do you do those kind of things? And that's what we're talking about today, right? Like all these ways of coping. And I think number one, at least for me, is getting on medication that works for you. That's going to help heal your mind. But like I said, you could still experience symptoms on it, but hopefully much fewer, less severe. So if you're doing that consistently, taking your meds every single day, also like the top five things that I video is so meds, sleep, rest, exercise, nutrition, having a routine. So doing, exercise and all your meals and your sleep in a routine can really help. There are lots of things that can help, but this is something that is lifelong, and that is a real condition to deal with to some extent, but hopefully we can do better, right? Keep doing better. Anne Lunam said, after my first manic episode in 2020 with psychosis, one of my sisters and brother were horrible to me. Stigma, misinformation, and wanting to steer clear of mental illness were the problem. Yeah, and unfortunately, there are going to be people, maybe not, maybe friends of yours before you were diagnosed, or had symptoms, maybe there was no issue, and then suddenly they either because of stigma or not wanting to accept that you have bipolar, are treating you differently. And in those cases, I mean, I know I have an ex sibling. I have someone in my family who I didn't accept it or treated me with stigma, but being around him made it hard for me to stay well. Very, very hard. And this person just, you know, he's he's a very difficult person for a lot of people in my family, not just me. So I had to create a boundary and not be in contact with him anymore. And it's been that way for a very so I understand it, and I've been through it somewhat in that way where I just had to disconnect from someone. And, my life has been better for it. And it sucks. And it's hard on other people in my family that we don't have any kind of relationship. But it's also been the best thing I could do, um, just to have peace of mind. And it has helped my bipolar. It really has. Okay, Andrea. Wait, I want to make sure if I didn't miss something. We'll see. Andrea said, do you participate in any mindfulness practices? So my dad is a therapist. Well, he recently retired, but he was a therapist for forever, many, many years. He was big on mindfulness and he wanted me to practice mindfulness. And I think I kind of do that in my everyday life without even really thinking about it. Like I don't know if it's a bipolar thing or if it's just like how I am, but I'm very cognizant of everything. Like when I go on walks, I'm very like present and sort of noting, okay, like there's this, there's that. Like I'm very like curious. That's part of it. But I don't do anything with mindfulness that's like really that I'm actively thinking about, just being honest. I used to try to practice meditation and yoga, and then I don't know, it was hard for me, just honestly. And that's something I could probably work on is trying to get back into a practice of meditation. Let me know in the chat sorts of things help you. I find that like doing yoga is sort of like a meditation, but then I got more into like lifting weights and walking and stuff like that. So kind of fell out of it. But Andrea, do you do mindfulness or anyone else? And how is that going for you? Let's see. Okay. Okay, RM 10177. Have you tried mood and sleep tracking? If yes, do you think it helps? I try but fail to be consistent. So I do sleep tracking, but it's like I have one of those sleep number beds, so it kind of like tracks it for me. But I find that really helpful. And if you don't have a sleep number bed, I mean, obviously you could do like when you think you're going to sleep, but sometimes like you're up in the night, and if you have one of those aura rings or something like that, I think or even like a watch, like a smartwatch, that might be able to do it as well, where it tracks when you're sleeping, when you're awake, when your sleep is restless. And then also, I know like for the sleep number bed, it tracks like your heart rate. Um, I think but I mostly pay attention to the sleep because I want to see like how much restful sleep did I get. And sometimes, like, if I wake up in the night, I don't really know how long I'm awake. Like, it might feel like an hour, but it's actually 10 minutes or something like that. So I do think it helps me, but I don't know that it's like completely necessary. Like, it's nice if you can do it, you can like afford it, and you have that option, but I don't think it's necessary. I think you can kind of keep track on your own. As far as mood tracking, I would love to say I do this, but I don't. I do it sort of like myself, but I don't write anything down or use like an app. Um, I just kind of am always paying attention to how I'm feeling, and if something starts to be a little off, I'm like very honed in on that. But I think especially starting out, or even if you're just having trouble keeping track, just having a mood app could be a great way to do it, or just pen and paper. I mean, you don't have to use technology necessarily, but yeah, I would have I think sometimes for me, if I have to like really write things down, like it becomes a little bit too much of a chore, and it almost like stresses me out too much, and then like that could lead to having episodes or like overwhelm me. So that's just me personally though. I think for lots of people, these kinds of mood apps do help. Take it with a grain of salt. Okay. Yeah, Ma says meditation is a major support. Yes, I do think. I do think it's good. And my daughter actually, like the times I've been doing it is when Pearson says to me, like, do you want to meditate with me? And I'm like, sure. Like I always forget that she like like does these things. And sometimes we'll do yoga together. And it's more like a quick, like 5-10 minute thing. But I think it's really good. It's fun to do together, and it's also like it is good for your body and mind. And yoga's just hard. Like I just get tired of it because it's so hard. I don't know. And I know like with exercise, I think it's better if you find something you or at least enjoy more than other things, and just that way you can stick with it better. So that's why I don't like push yoga so much, because if that's not the thing that does it for you and like is the most enjoyable, then you're not going to stick with it. Okay. Yeah, Megadan said, I currently have a skeleton crew of both family and friends due to life stuff. And then Molly was asking, maybe he already answered, he or she, they, yeah, already answered it. I feel the same way. I have like a small circle. I've called it skeleton crew before too, but like smaller circle of people who are like the trust circle. Like people really close with, you know, everything about me, including bipolar, who I can talk to very openly about it. Maybe they have bipolar or maybe they don't. I mean, the bipolar piece, like having that support is like so good because you just don't have to explain things, or like, you know, which explaining things is fine, but it's also, it can be harder if you're in an episode and like maybe you're not feeling in the mood to explain it, you know? You just like need some support. People are like really great. But yeah, I have a small group of like friends and family who are really supportive, and I get it sucks that not everyone has that, and I am lucky for having that. But you know, if you can find some people, if you can find like even like coming onto a live like this, or like finding community online, that can be really good too. I love that community. Let's see. Yeah, other people are saying they have their skeleton crews as well. And Molly said, I hate downward dog. I won't even do it anymore. Sometimes I feel like it'll bring on migraine for me, or like a headache. Like my head is upside down like a good thing for me. You have to figure out what's good for you and what if it's good for most people, great. If it's not good for you, like don't do it. Do we want to talk about any coping mechanisms that are kind of unhealthy, like you would consider unhealthy? Like I don't know if like something episodes I shouldn't be doing. Like I'm doing like I'm of course like if I'm feeling mania or hypomania, it's like I want to talk constantly to friends or like go out more and like do social things, but really I should be doing the opposite. But sometimes I give into that and I start talking on the phone all day or texting and like doing things that like this is bad for me. This is actually like bad for what's going on right now. Or having to do with nutrition, like because I had to up my Seroquel or like my antipsychotic, my appetite is crazy high, like just wanting to eat all the things and really like having all this sugar and stuff that I should not be having, like things like that. Or I know sometimes people will talk about cannabis. Now, for some people, like cannabis is obviously like kind of controversial, especially with bipolar. For some people, they say it helps them, it can push them into mania and psychosis. But I think it can be hard because it feels like something that initially might calm you or like bring you down somewhat, but it actually can do the opposite, right? It can push you into mania. I haven't done anything like that for a long, long time, but I know there's lots of people who are self-medicating with. And Moss said, Jess, it's so sweet. P is leading. Yeah, Pearson. Sometimes I'm just like, who are you? Like, where did you come from? I love it, but I'm like, like, I just feel like some ways like kids can seem so much more mature, or not mature, but just like they know the basic things, and they're like helping you along, and like you've lost your way with all this like stress and like stuff you have to do, and like can bring you back sometimes. Okay. Mega Dan said, what jobs do you think are good for people struggling with bipolar? Well, a lot of it is going to be very personal to what you enjoy, of course. But I think the basics would be like, as far as getting good sleep, people do not do that well with like shift work or overnight work or tons of travel. Now, I know people that do all of those, all and they have bipolar and they do well with it. I would not do well with that. I also do well with like having a regular schedule and not having to work overtime or on weekends. Again, I know people who do that and do fine with it. So it really depends on your personality, kind of what might trigger your bipolar, which may not trigger mine or vice versa. Um, I like working in a job that's very flexible and working from home, which is what I do. But I've seen all different variations. I work as an editor for a scientific journal. I like having a job that is somewhat creative and it's and very like I'm not doing the same things every day. That's good for me. I know I'm not actually giving you jobs, like actual jobs, but just sort of like the criteria that typically works for people with bipolar. So hopefully that, and also like for me, also I don't do well in a job where like I'm working with the public and I'm working, closely with a lot of people every day. Like in my job, I work on a team, a small team of three, and but I'm mostly doing work on my own, and that works the best for me. Okay. Oh, Moss, I keep saying thank you for putting in that the questions are above, but I think I'm catching them. I think. Oh, Molly said alcohol be a like an unhealthy coping mechanism. Megadan says too much coffee. I've definitely been there on the coffee. I don't drink alcohol anymore, but it's only been a few years since I stopped. It was just messing up my sleep and I was like feeling horrible the next day, and I was just like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't know. I was just like finally had this like moment of like, why am I doing this to myself? And I wasn't doing it that often. So like even when I was drinking, it wasn't, I don't know. I would have one drink and I was like really drunk. It just wasn't good. I missed something else. Molly says trying to get people to understand sometimes can be unhealthy. Yeah. And you have to know when to just like give it up, right? Unfortunately. Um, like I said, my dad was a therapist. I'm very lucky that he really understood it. And my mom also, she worked a lot and she was very understanding, but not everyone is going to be that way. And that's just unfortunately the way it is. And you have to know when to stop trying to get them to understand and maybe just have to distance yourself somewhat and find other people who do understand, even if they're online, even if they're not in person, trying to find people who you can connect with. Yeah, Megan said too much caffeine pushes me to mania every time. I'm a coffee addict. Well, you know what I did? I didn't like go cold turkey off coffee. I very, very slowly had to like add in decaf. And this took place like over like a month or two until I was finally off it completely. So I really get it, and it is hard. I found that I couldn't just like stop it, or I couldn't go like over the course of a week. I had to make it a very slow weaning off, and that's what finally worked for me. But I admit when I was so I, was in the hypomania, but then I was on Seroquel, higher Seroquel. I was starting to feel really sedated and I had to go to work. I had to go to work that day and I was like, should I just have some regular coffee? And I ended up having only had like a few sips or something one of the days, but it was enough just to sort of wake me up a little. And that way I didn't have to like wean off it again. But it's hard. Okay, Andrea was saying drinking more alcohol or being more risk seeking. Yeah, yes. Wanting to use other substances like weed and other things I won't mention. Hey, I think, a lot of us have been there. Also, self harm, intrusive thoughts. Yes. Okay, those are great things to bring up. So, risk seeking, this can be a major thing with people with bipolar if you're in an episode, especially. Um, Self-harm and intrusive thoughts. Also, a lot of us have been there. I've never really been a self-harm, and more like an intrusive thoughts and severe SI, especially in depression for me, is when that will become an issue. And it's really hard. It's really hard to live through. And I do better when I've increased my Seroquel, and even taking Seroquel can help in depression. But it is super difficult. And I think I can really do to avoid, especially the SI, but also intrusive thoughts, because that can, for me, can become worse in episodes, is to like, try not to go into episodes, which is not always possible. And I get that, but to try to take care of myself as much as possible outside of the episodes when I'm stable so that I don't go into them. But again, it's not a perfect science. Also saying, I agreed on the job schedule matters, even regular break lunch times. Yes. I always take my lunch at the same time. I always take a full hour. I think that really does help as well. Okay. Livius to Ian. Hello. I lost all my life savings and went into 20,000 worth of credit card debt. So I'm absolutely devastated, especially if I think I'm finally enlightened. Yes, there's a lot here. So feeling enlightened in a manic episode, pretty common thing, right? And it's like you don't even realize at times that you're manic until it's over. And I've never, I'm sorry to hear about losing that much money and also the credit card debt. I've made some large purchases during mania, one of which was grad school and then did not finish. That was, I only recently paid that off. That was a lot. So, I really relate, and I hope you're trying to find, forgiveness is the right word, but just understand that this is actually a symptom of your bipolar disorder. And the best you can take care of yourself and hopefully not have maybe these symptoms as often, or, maybe, you can kind of minimize this from happening in the future. But in the meantime, I really understand. I hope you can get some help with it. Like maybe you can do what is it called, where they like consolidate your debt, something like that. Yeah, I understand you being devastated. Hello from Iceland. I don't know how to say Thorera something. Hello, glad you're here. Yeah, money management is a real struggle, even on more of like a day-to-day basis. Even it can be hard. Right. So Andrew is saying, I have a high functioning job, but I've had to make drastic changes to my work hours and stop working night shifts. Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy. And I feel like work, I mean, this is like a whole live probably, but trying to stay stable and working, and whether you're working full time, part time, whether you're on disability, because, you shouldn't work and that's right for you, that's, what you should be doing, then it's just a lot of stress. Even still, like I have a position that is, like I said, very flexible, good hours. I feel very supported. I don't have a lot of like strict deadlines. It's pretty good for the situation, but it's still a lot of stress. It's still work. It's still a lot of projects I have to do. I have to run meetings. I have to, do a lot of things that I'm doing for the first time, which can be intimidating and overwhelming. And I know that it's like I'm doing it and I feel like I can do it, but sometimes work stress leads to episodes. But at the same time, I'm trying to keep working and I think I can do it, but it's hard. It is really hard. Okay, Moss said, question, dealing with post-episode guilt and shame. Sorry, I must have missed that one, so thank you. It's hard. It's hard. So I'm sort of dealing with this right now, and I'm trying to give myself a break and really be kind to myself, because I know, and some of the people on here probably experienced this, but like when I was going through my episode just recently with the mixed hypomania, I really kind of fell off the grid for a little while. And I felt like that was actually necessary, better. And I did try to check in and just be like, hey, I'm still here, I'm okay. But I just felt like I wasn't there for those people. And a lot of those people, some have bipolar disorder. They're also dealing with a lot of things. And some don't, but they also have life going on and they are dealing with things, even if it's not bipolar. And I just felt like it's just unfortunate that I couldn't be there for them at that time. And because my episode went so long, it felt worse than usual to me, and I had more guilt about it and shame about it because it was 2 months instead of being like 1 month or a few weeks. I felt like, well, that was an extended period of time, and I feel bad about not being around as much. And I still do feel bad about it, but at this, I need to, and I do give myself grace and understand that I could not have done it differently. And I know that, like, I just really could not have done it differently. No matter what is happening in an episode for you, whatever has happened has happened. And at that point afterward, it's like we need to figure out self acceptance and acceptance for these things that happened were in an episode. They were because of the episode, whether you were trying to, or you were doing things in an episode that were like wildly outside of who you are, your personality, like the way you would normally act. But if you can acknowledge that it is the bipolar and not you, I think it's easier to move forward with acceptance and dealing with that guilt and shame around it. Because then it's easier to be like, separate it from yourself. And still, like, you still have to take responsibility, right? So let's say in an episode you did something obviously that you wouldn't normally do, but like maybe you got in an argument with someone or you were horrible to someone. Obviously, I would make amends in that situation, and that's going to help the person who was on the receiving end, but that's also going to help you feel better about the situation and hopefully like mend fences with people if that's what. So, but it sucks, and it's still something you have to deal with afterward, that you're like, this is my illness. Why do I have to deal with this? Well, I mean, you still did it in the end. And that's all we can do, is try to make it better. Yeah, Megan said, I went back to my posts on social media after my episode and was so embarrassed. Like deleting posts that you made in mania or depression. I mean, I know it was already out there, but like sometimes that helps you feel a little better. Like, and I do try to post less. It definitely doesn't always work, but I'm just like, I'll like start to like post something to Instagram stories, and then I'm just like, I don't need to be talking about this right now. Like, let me sleep on it. And then tomorrow, if I really still want to post it, I will. But even the next day, so you might be like, this is a great idea. But yeah, it is hard. Okay, Joel Cortez has a question. Doctor just put me on 600 milligrams of lithium. Been going through some things lately. Is that a light dose? Just curious what a normal dose would be. Okay, well, I actually just came down from 600 milligrams to, both of those doses are fairly low. I mean, whatever's right for you is what's right for you, so it doesn't really matter. But a typical dose that I've heard is at least 900 and up. Like I've heard of like 900 to like 1200, but I've just never been on high doses because I'm super doing okay. Oh, it looks like it's back. So yeah, 600 is fairly low, but if you're sensitive to meds, could be normal for you. I took 750 and then 600 for many years. Now I'm on 450 because I'm having a little bit of minor kidney dysfunction. So like tapering down a bit, but I'm still, as long as you're within your lithium level, your range, it's fine. We have a few more minutes. We're getting towards the end. So how do I best support my fiance? This is from AMKQ TV. He got diagnosed with bipolar 2 last summer. He's in early stages, trying to figure out meds, his recent episodes. Well, the best thing, I mean, it can take a little while, but to get on meds that work for him, and that is a process sometimes. It doesn't always, you don't always get the right med right out of the gate. I know I didn't. So I think that's the number one thing. And number two thing I would say is if he can get on a sleep schedule, a good sleep schedule for him, whatever amount of sleep if he can try to go to bed the same time, get up the same time, I would say that's the number two biggest thing to do. Let's see. Trying to get any final questions. If you have any final questions. Oh, you're welcome, AM. Well, we're gonna be wrapping up. I also wanted to say that, sometimes, well, it's gonna be very personal what helps you the most. But I do think, there's lots of ways we can try to stay well outside of medication. But I'm saying that in thinking like my number one way that I stay well is definitely medication. And it took me a long time meds, but once I did, it was like a whole world of difference. Whole like my life changed. Like lithium pretty much, I mean it's not it's not wrong to say it saved my life. And now I also take the Seroquel, but um then there's everything else that we do. And that does help. And meds is the biggest thing, but everything else does be there to stability most of the time, not always. But yeah, it's a lot of work, and I put out like a meme the other day that was talking about all like the quiet kind of work and strength that people with bipolar have. And it's true because there is a lot going on behind the scenes that we're doing to try to stay well. And I don't think a lot of that and, acknowledge that. And a lot of it is like a quiet way of doing it. Oh, and thank you, Rodrine, for happy Mother's Day for tomorrow. Yes, my hair is going gray. I don't color it. I'm 46. So, yeah. And I think when my husband had surgery a couple years ago, it went more a lot of stress. But yeah. Oh, hi, Willow the cat. That's okay. You can always watch the replay as well. Well, I try to keep these to an hour because I want it to be good for everyone's mental health, including mine, and not go too long. And happy Mother's Day. And if you're not someone who celebrates Mother's Day, either you're not a mom or, not, don't have a mom or things like that, that's okay too. I'll be your mom. I'll just be your friend and be your mom. But I really appreciate everyone coming and talking so much and like really participating. And I'll see you again in a couple weeks. We'll have to think of a topic for next time. All right. Thanks for being here. Bye.